Good morning. It's Saturday, January 13th. Robert Whitaker here with Journeys Through Time from HansfordCountyHeritage.com. Today we're going to hear from Roy Lee Updergrove, who built many homes around the community of Spearman here. Of course, he did a lot of this during what was, I guess, a housing boom during the mid 50s and into the 60s. He grew up here in Spearman. He mentions building homes for the McCloy families, three generations of McCloys. I thought that was very interesting. Like Thane McCloy built a house for Thane McCloy, Wilson McCloy, Cy McCloy, of course. Some of Thane's children and grandchildren he also built homes for, which was very interesting. He makes a comment in here that in 1996, he goes, well, it certainly is cost prohibitive to build homes in this day and time. He said that in 1996. And I graduated high school from Groover in 1994. And, you know, I'm thinking back, I don't remember many people building homes during that time. You know, I remember interest rates being a lot like they are right now, you know, anywhere from 6 to 9, 8, 9% in the early 90s and mid 90s. And I think, you know, we're in a time like that again now. Just 3 years ago, Holly and I considered building a home rather than purchasing a home. And we ultimately ended up purchasing this home we're in here on Archer Street and fixing it up. It had been vacant for quite some time. So I think we're kind of in the same economic situation today in 2024 as was 18 years ago. No, this is more than 18. Goodness gracious, this is 28 years ago in 1996. Yeah, I just learned how old I am again. So anyway, great interview. Another factoid, he built the KRDF building. That's pretty cool. Although today it's no longer KRDF. But it's a good listen, and there'll be more to come. Thank you.
You're in tune with KRDF FM, Spearman, Texas. KRDF time at 9:06, and we welcome you to Hansford Information on KRDF. And here with today's guest, your hostess, Carolyn Cummings.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hansford Information. This is another in our series of Hansford Memories. Today is May 27th, 1996. It's Memorial Day. Over the last several weeks, we've been talking to different people about the events and changes in Spearman. Our guest this morning is one of the people responsible for a number of those changes in Spearman, builder Roy Lee Updergrove. Good morning, Roy Lee.
Good morning.
Well, when we get into this, we need to talk about where you originally were from, your family, and how you came to be a builder, and kind of about what are some of the houses that you built in Spearman. Is that about what we need to cover this morning?
Okay. We moved. I was born in Sarah, Oklahoma in 1923 on February the 4th. So that makes me 73 years old today in 2 or 3 months. We moved out here to Hansford County in 1925. My dad bought a farm out here about 9 miles southeast of Spearman, and we lived there to the 30s. About 1929 or 30, I guess, we moved a little closer to town. He bought a bigger farm, and so that's where I spent all my school days out there. And I started school here in the 2nd grade. I don't know why that, except I guess my big brothers taught me a little, helping them with their schoolwork. And I graduated from Spearman High School in 1940. And I always did like to build things. I started out, I thought, well, I want to be in the aircraft business. And I went to a welding school in Wichita, Kansas, and then I went to another aircraft and engine school in Fort Worth after that, and I came back to the farm, and I built my first house in 1942 out on the farm for my folks. And building procedures were a little different then than they are now. I didn't have a skill saw. We didn't even have electricity at that time. They'd been working on REA for several years, but anyway, I did all my sawing with the old reciprocating type in your left arm or right arm, and it takes quite a bit of energy to make a big pile of sawdust that way. Nowadays, you can make a big pile real easy.
That's right. How old were you when you built that house for your parents?
I was 19 years old. This was in 1942. My dad and I, we took an old truck down to East Texas and we got a load of dimension lumber and brought back, and things were pretty tight then. The war had just begun, but we somehow managed to get some nice plumbing fixtures. Everything you bought took a priority. You had to have a stamp of some sort to buy it. But we put a bathroom in it and made a fairly nice house for that time.
About how big a house was it, Roy Lee?
Let's see, I believe it was 26 by 42, just a rectangular house. It had two bedrooms and a bathroom in between, and a couple closets in between, and a big kitchen and a living room. That's it.
But that was a real good size house back then. And
well, it's a lot better than what we had.
What happened to that house?
Well, in 1948, my dad sold that place out there, and he moved that house to town. That was in the deal that he keep the house. So it's situated over here on Haney Street right now, 821, I believe, Haney. And they lived in it till, well, my mother died in 1973, and my dad had broken his hip about a year earlier than that, and that caused part of her problems, I guess. And he lived about another year and a half, and I sold it for us kids. I have two brothers and a sister. And I was the administrator of the estate. We sold it. It's still hanging in there. Pretty nice looking old house.
Pretty well built then.
Yeah. Well, my dad thought it was the stoutest house in the country. I've heard him tell when they were going to move it. I used a different technique for floor bracing support then. I ran a solid beam down through the middle of it, and I bolted the mud cell to that thing, and they hadn't taken the bolts out when they started jacking it up. he thought it hadn't been a good house. I would have torn it up.
Isn't that the truth? But you still weren't officially in business to do building.
Oh, no.
You built another house then after that.
Yes. I built, I guess about the next house I built was probably in Sunray in about 46. That was after the war. I got home from the Air Force in February of 1946. And it wasn't long after that till I built that house over there and did a few little remodel jobs there, and then I came back home, and Betty and I got married in February of 1949, and we were living in a little house that's kind of loose windows, and the drapes would stand out from the wall. So we got busy and built a house of our own, new house over on Archer Street. And there were two or three more houses around there. You could point to people's house and say, that's where so-and-so lived. Gus Renner and his wife lived across a little narrow block in front of us. The Catholic church was beside their house, and the Hansford Hospital was an old army barracks about 100 feet long or more than that. It might have been longer than 100 feet. But it faced Evans Street, about where the new addition to the manor is now. Just diagonally across the block there, nothing between where we lived and it.
There weren't very many houses past 7th Street probably at that time.
Past
Or was
7th, there weren't any.
there
Well,
weren't?
the Catholic Church, it was on the south side of 7th, but I can't remember any more there at that time.
So you actually were starting a new addition when you. That was in the 800 block of
Mm.
South Archer.
Let's see. Yeah, 819, I guess, was the address.
Well, when did you actually go into the construction building business?
Well, I suppose that was kind of a kickoff thing. That we sold that house in 2 or 3 years, and actually built us another one over on Endicott Street, and I did quite a bit of building for people out in the country, some old timers. I did work for over the years for three generations of this family. I remember telling Alan one time that, well, they had a girl about 6 years old. I said, well, if I build her house, that'll make 4 generations. But he said, yeah, but what'll you be? So she still doesn't have a house. She's not married or anything, but I probably could build her a house even yet.
Oh, I bet you could. You don't want to share who that family is.
Well, that's McCloy's.
McCloy's,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I've done a lot of work for them. I started in about 1950, and they started that feedlot out there in 1954, and I was working on a new house then for them on that, and we put a full basement under it, and one of the boys lived there a while, and they've sold and divided up their stuff about 20 years later. And I built for Ms. McCloy 2 or 3 times. Went out there one time to build a garage on her house, and had an electrician from Groover that's going to come over and wire it. He came out there with about 6 boxes and a half a roll of Romex to do that wiring job on that. And he told me when he was through, he said he used over a mile of wire. And we'd remodeled her house and added on to it and bricked it, redid the roof and all that stuff. But he thought that's quite a bit of wire for a garage addition.
Kind of sounds that way.
Let's see, she has 4 boys live around here now. It's Willard, we call Cy, and Wilson, and Thane, and Carson. And this house I built there in 1954 was for Carson. But he didn't. Well, they lived there, I guess, 2 or 3 years. And then Wilson lives there now, and I've done work for Wilson 2 or 3 different times in the 50s out in New Mexico. They lived out in the boonies about 26 miles north of Naravasa, and they're real fine people to work for. Built Thane a new house in 1962, and then went back about 70, I guess, and remodeled it, or 70 or 71, put an addition on it, big den. And the addition, I think, cost about as much or maybe more than the original house. And things have just continually gone up in price. I mean, it looks nearly prohibitive to me today to build a house at today's prices.
Well, before we went on the air, you said that you had built this radio station,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about the exorbitant prices. What did this originally cost?
Well, Coy paid me $12,000. That was a contract on this building. And you said that he did the wiring. Well, that was on his house, wasn't it?
I
Or
think
what?
George was saying something like
Well,
that.
I built his house the next year. Broke my leg while I was working on it. Wasn't on the job. I just went home and stepped in the bathtub, and I had some Vaseline blue bath beads in there, and I got out of the tub. I just got my foot wet. I started through the kitchen, and I slipped and popped my ankle against the floor, and so that kind of messed me up a little bit. I'm managed to get through it, got it built. But it had a kind of a complicated roof on it. It's cut up pretty bad, and I thought, I got to do that myself. So I floored it pretty well, pretty much the ceiling joist, and got up there and cut the rafters on my knees, waddling around on that. And finally got through it.
Well, let's real quickly take a break and come back, and we'll go ahead and talk about some more construction here in town and some other builders that were possibly in competition with you. We'll be back after this message.
Picture a playground filled with 4-year-old children. Picture each face so full of promise. Well, which child deserves to be read to? This one? Or is it that one over there? Which child will get a hot lunch? Who will have a chance to sing? The choice is yours. Volunteer for Head Start. With your help, more low-income preschool children can get what other children already have. Call 1-800-27-START for more information and a brochure on volunteer opportunities with Head Start in your community. Change the world of a child, and you change the world.
Brought to you by Head Start, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Hansford Information. This morning we're visiting with Roy Lee Updegrove about building in Spearman. About when did the big boom, housing boom in Spearman start?
Well, I guess it was in about the mid-50s. The oil people came in, quite a few of them came in, and I built several houses for them over in this new addition that Blodgett and Lynn opened up that was south of 7th Street and to the east of the house that Marion Glover had there on Bernice, on the corner of Bernice. I made a trip with J.D. Helms. He was the lawyer that was working on getting that development started. I went with him one time to Lubbock to help get it set up for GI loans, meet all their qualifications, specifications, and I built the very first house that was built out there, and it was just plotted, had steel stakes for the corners, and it had a little scratch down the side for where the curb and gutter would be, and it seemed like it took quite a bit of nerve to make sure you're getting this house on the right property you'd bought to put it on. And I built several out there. That one was 703 Lee Drive, built it for Don Spoonmore, and he thought that was the best house he's ever built. He'd tell me, I'd see him a year or two later, and he said, I haven't got a single crack in this house. And he really was proud of his house. I think it cost about $13,000 lot and everything.
Couldn't touch it for that today.
No, I think they sold it for about $39,000. And they gave me a 10% discount on the lot, it being the first one they'd sold out there in that new addition. I built every house that I built there has changed owners. I don't know how many times. I expect these people stayed in theirs longer than any one of the houses. But I built one for a man, Healer. He wasn't on Lee Drive, and then Sparks right beside of him, and then the house that Mr. Hickerson lived in was for a fellow by the name of Gene Varney. There are none of them around here now. Built one about the same time over here on Townsend Street for Don Knox, and he still lives in his.
Know that house well.
Mm-hmm. I built one on down the street there for the White House Lumber Company. I don't remember when that was. Quite a bit later than that. I was pretty busy in the 50s and 60s and 70s. I never was caught up. I always had somebody waiting on me. And I built, Jack Oaks made this little addition over there on Glover Place where we live. And I built 4 of the 10 houses on that circle there. We live in one of them.
Did you primarily just build houses, or I know you built the radio station, but did you build a lot of businesses in town too, or?
Not a lot of businesses. I worked on schools, additions to schools, things like that. Morrison and Pringle, when they were in business, I did work for those.
When did you actually retire?
Well, let's see, 80, probably 84, 1984.
And I put a real big question mark on the end of that because you really haven't retired.
Well, I still get involved in some stuff that I haven't done any big jobs. I built a little house over here on 7th Street and Wilbanks for a couple that the lady used to help me back from about 73 to this was in 86, I believe. Built that house. I was supposedly retired then, and the fella across the street, he told someone, said, some little old girl and an old man are over there building that house.
But even though you've retired, through your church, you do some mission work.
Yes.
Where do you go to help build on those mission work?
We've been to Matamoros, Mexico, about every year since 1975, and they always need something either built or repaired down there, and things have improved some over the times we've been there. You can see quite a change from then to now, and it's still plenty of room for improvement.
That's through First Baptist Church?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the helpers that go down with you? Does it change every year?
Well, we kind of dwindled down this last year. Doyle Jackson and his wife went, and Brooks Beck and his mother, and I guess are the only ones that went last year. And we've had 10 or 11, somewhere around 10 for nearly every year. A lot of those are kind of like the rest of us. They're getting old. Alta Groves has gone several times. And Glenn and Evelyn Hiller, they were just staunch supporters every year and went. And Ms. Wallace, F.W. Thomas has been.
Is Matamoros the only one that you go, or have there been some others that you've gone on?
Well, it's mainly right around there. We've gone to other little missions out away from there, but we kind of pretty well got settled on this children's home there that's about 12 miles southwest of Matamoros.
Now, do you load up all your equipment and you have to take all the construction supplies down,
Mm-hmm.
or are there places to buy anything in that area?
Well, yes, you can buy anything you need down there, but a lot of times we need to prefabricate it here because you can't take a big table saw and things like that to work with. And this year I took my pickup, as I usually do, and it's full of pre-cut things to use to put together there. And there are lumber yards there in Matamoros, and we've gone to them to buy things. And then there are better ones across in Brownsville. We can get there, but we always have a hassle getting across that bridge. They want some revenue or something that just gives us a hard time, mainly. We've never had but one. A couple of years ago, he said, "I really appreciate what you're doing down here," and he let us go on. But some of them, they don't sidetrack us, and they look around and finally have to maybe pay them $20, $30 to get across.
What would you? Is there anything you'd like to share with us that we haven't covered that you think is important to get down for the history of Spearman, since we are taping these?
Well, I heard someone saying here a few days ago about the pavement here in Spearman on the streets. And I've heard my dad say that he helped lay some of those brick on that pavement.
On Main Street.
On Main Street,
Well, Ralph Blodgett was here, I think, last Tuesday, and he was talking about when he was a little boy sitting down there in front of the Mays building watching those brick being laid. So he was probably watching your dad.
Well, might have been. And the road to Grover, it was dirt, and you can still see where it leaves the main highway out here about 5 miles west of town, where it goes down through those canyons and then winds up that other road. I look for that thing every time I go out there nearly. It's still, you can see it if you know where to look, where the old road was, but it was caliche down in that bottom part there. Things have changed quite a bit, huh?
Well, you've helped make it change with all the construction. In all fairness, you were one of the builders. Kilgore?
Yes, Dick Kilgore.
Who were some of the others?
Well, Roscoe Nelson's built some houses, or mainly just subcontracted them. Callaway, they built some houses. I built some for Callaway. Builders have always been kind of scarce around Spearman. It's been hard to find good help around Spearman.
That's why you kept busy and had a waiting list, evidently.
Well, I always tried to do people a good job, and I don't know of any that I couldn't go back and work for. There's really nice people around here to work for.
Well, there's one other thing that I think we need to tell people. You were involved in building, you were involved in your church and your family, but in reading your history out of the Hansford history book, you and Betty both have been in the Masons, and tell what positions and how long you've been in that before we go.
Well, I helped build the Masonic Lodge over there in 1964. I guess we moved into it in 1964, and I helped build the original Spanish Mission over here. It's on 7th Street, I guess. And then they had a fire in it in 1988, Christmas time, and it needed major repair after that. And then we built another auditorium on that when we rebuilt it. And I was master of the lodge in 1967 and 8. It goes from mid-year to mid-year, and then again in 86. And Betty, she's a worthy matron of the Eastern Star, and I couldn't tell you what year.
According to this, it says 70.
Well, I started saying 69 or 70 in there.
And before we go, let's catch up on where your children are.
Well, I have a daughter, Leanne. She and her husband, they live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They have three children. And Valerie and her husband live in Dallas. They, between the two of them, have 4 children. And then Alan lives in Dallas, or Coppell, and he and Donna have 2 girls.
And Betty, is she still with the school?
No, she's been retired 3 or 4 years, I think.
I thought she had, but I couldn't remember for sure. Is there anything else we need to cover?
Well, I'm pretty bad about thinking. I can't think of anything else.
Well, we will close it then at that, Roy Lee. We sure thank you for coming. And you've definitely been instrumental in helping Spearman grow. And I think you can be very proud of your contributions to the town.
Well, thank you. I've stayed pretty busy.
Okay. We've been visiting this morning with Roy Lee Updegrove, and we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Hansford Information and Hansford Memories, and we'll be listening for future editions of this program. We thank you again, and you have a good Memorial Day.